Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of the Pixel Crashers podcast, a podcast where we discuss our thoughts on gaming news and other topics that we randomly ramble on about. I am Angelus de Mortiel, together with the now just returning to us Kev the Gamer, or KevN7, or shit, I don't even remember what your name is anymore.
Your girlfriend's favorite, that's what my name is. Switch gang, bitch.
Right. And then we also have Xaiphen, who once upon a time, he actually used to be a star commander of a squadron of the most elite space fighters, but then they started giving him pills at the mental health facility, and now he thinks he's on Earth.
He also used to be a gamer.
It is one of the greatest disappointments of my life.
Being a gamer? Being a gamer is one of the biggest disappointments of your life?
No, the pills.
Understand.
Oh, the pills. Yeah, the pills are kind of disappointing. Unfortunately, they don't make the butterflies go away like they told me they would.
Oh, you need Jack Daniels for that.
No, Jack Daniels makes more of the butterflies come around. I'm just like,
you're not doing it right.
But you need the elixir, Jameson, to help you through it.
the elixir, aka Jameson. Let's keep music quiet in the background.
I don't even know what you want to call it. It's a mixed drink, but instead of mixing it with like chasers, they mix it with other alcohol to the point where the shit's like, we call it ether. You need some of that. Makes you get all your troubles. One hell of a hangover in the morning, though.
That's not fun. What point is that fun? Who does that?
See, you know how to avoid the hangover? Keep drinking.
Yep.
You just don't stop.
I think that's how you make the hangover worse.
Nope, it makes the hangover all better.
Not if you don't ever stop.
Hey guys, I just want to throw it out there that I realize that I have successfully outdone Egypt Pie's bullshit novelty mug wannabe coolness, because he may have a Reese's coffee cup, but his isn't nearly as snarky as mine. I
just bought a Cuphead coffee mug, actually.
That's actually badass. That is legitimately badass.
Mm-hmm. It should be here in the mail on Amazon yesterday. It'll be here a couple days.
Although Kev and I were going back and forth about him saying that Microsoft needs to buy up all these indie studios.
No, I was saying just one.
Just one. Oh, just one. Well, I know that Tick is talking about what two studios that they should buy up, and I'm like,
well,
no.
I think Microsoft does need to bolster up their studio lineup. And we know Microsoft doesn't make anything from scratch, so if they can buy someone out, I'm like, Undead Labs already basically makes games for Microsoft anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'll just bring them on the team. Though, and I think because remember, I'm about software over hardware. To me, that's what makes a console better, is the software selection. So if you can make the Xbox software selection better, and make it consistent, because they have more studios under their whatever you want to call it, under their umbrella. It's for a better experience. It's better for a better experience for people who like gaming with Microsoft products. That's where my head is.
I can understand the desire there, for a studio, or for a company to have the strongest, I guess, portfolio that they possibly can. But the one thing that I will say, though, is I don't think the answer to that, though, is for them to buy up indie studios, because as you yourself said, indie studios are doing quite fine, and they seem to be able to put out decent games while still being on work for hire contracts for those big companies like Microsoft. And I think that it does better for them for the dev studios to maintain their kind of creative independence, where, okay, so, and I think that's where it is, the difference of perspective of, you're looking at it from the perspective of Microsoft, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the dev studio, and kind of, to me, I think that if they don't want to do Microsoft stuff, if they're an independent studio, they can do Microsoft stuff if they want, but then they can also do EA stuff if they want, or whoever else, if someone else has
like Insomniac and Sony kind of.
Yeah.
Insomniac came through, made Sunset Overdrive out of nowhere.
Yep.
And every other game they've made has been for Sony.
Yeah. And if they like working with that guy, and that's cool. I just think that them have essentially, I think that more dev studios should avoid the BioWare issue, where maybe and I think a lot of it is that, if I remember correctly, BioWare has been wanting to do a different game than their standard Mass Effect Dragon Age duo for a long time, and they kind of have been locked into that because that's what EA would sign off on. And
that's
so
what EA bought them for. EA bought them to be their RPG division.
Yeah,
and I get where you're coming from too. It's like, but my whole thing is Microsoft isn't EA. Like, EA just has a track record of just shitting on studios.
Here's a great example of that. Halo. Because Bungie wanted to be done with Halo in the third game. That was the grand finale. They were done with the series. And Microsoft wanted to keep a good thing rolling because it was making them money. And there was a disagreement, fallout, and Bungie was split and rebuilt. So Bungie officially is owned by Microsoft, but the people that
Bungie's independent now.
Yeah, half of them left and reformed their own studio just because they did not want to keep making Halo games, and Microsoft wanted them to keep making Halo games. And the few people that did, enjoy the Halo series and wanted to keep going with it, they stuck around with the actual Bungie game.
We're getting out strong opinions.
I can't say I agree with that opinion.
Hashtag fuck Microsoft.
But, keep in mind, I hate most of the companies, so it's not like I like their games.
If Microsoft or
I like
anybody else like that is buying out an indie studio, it's because that indie studio has already got a good thing rolling, and that the publisher wants to keep that rolling. They're not going to say, "Hey, I'm going to buy you out, and I want you to make a whole bunch of different variety of stuff." It's like, I want you to, keep, running your one pony.
I hear you, and maybe I'm being optimistic because the same way I say Microsoft isn't EA, I have to remember that Microsoft also isn't Sony. Sony allows their in-house developers, once you're proven, to say, okay, make something new. For example, Horizon Zero Dawn, after they made the 3-4 Killzone games, they said, you know what, we have this new idea we want to try, we think it's going to be really cool. They said, okay, now Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the best-selling PlayStation IPs of all time. That's kind of where my head is going.
Hold that. So when you're saying one of the best-selling IPs, you're comparing it to the Uncharted series, the juggernaut.
Not the absolute.
I was gonna say, it's not even that, but the statement is a little bit misleading, because if you compare, I guarantee you compare the sales figures of of an Uncharted game, probably outdoes Horizon Zero Dawn. Maybe not the last. I think the last Uncharted game didn't sell as well, but
they did pretty well. All of them are good. All of them are great.
Oh yeah.
But then again, Naughty Dog doesn't put out bad games. I can't think of any Naughty Dog game that's actually bad. Naughty God for the win. Hashtag. Put that on your Twitter.
I could probably find something. Everybody's got some shit in their closet that they don't want to talk about. Yeah. Let's be honest. Everybody's got that Superman 64.
Nobody makes something as bad as that old was it Atari, I think, or maybe it was NES ET game.
No, Atari. It was Atari.
It was the Atari 8600, I believe.
The shit that got buried in the desert. It was so bad.
Arguably Superman 64 was worse.
That was
arguably Superman 64 might be the worst game of all time.
I think that Superman 64 literally is considered, don't get me wrong. So I think that E.T. was probably the biggest disappointment of all time, and the reason why is because that game was, to this day, accounting for inflation, was one of the most expensive games ever made. And it did not sell well. In fact, it sold so badly that nobody wanted it on their shelves, hence why it ended up getting buried in the desert. So as far as one of the least liked and the biggest disappointments, that's E.T. But as far as one of the demonstrably worst games ever made, Superman 64.
I don't think they've ever made a good Superman game.
Honestly, and it's kind of tough though, right?
It is because game balance. Like, how do you balance Superman, who's OP as hell anyway?
Yeah, and because that's
they make Dragon Ball Z work, and Goku's basically just Japanese Superman.
Well, yeah, except for the fact that the Japanese Superman has like some level. He's got the, what is it called, the Shonen Jump type. Even though they weren't Shonen Jump, the Shonen Jump formula largely took itself from Dragon Ball Z, where essentially it's you are fighting the most powerful being in the universe, and oh my gosh, it's a struggle, and you almost get defeated, but you, through the power of friendship or some other such nonsense, you manage to.
What is this, Care Bears?
No, I'm not kidding. This is kind of the thing. Like some other such like silly nonsense. You pull out some hidden power and are able to achieve. But then next week, oh, sorry, that wasn't the most powerful being in the universe. This other guy is the most powerful being in the universe. Oh, but we've just barely beat him with the power of friendship. But wait, he wasn't actually.
Vegeta was the baddest motherfucker on the planet, in the galaxy, and then all of a sudden he's afraid of Frieza.
And then Frieza,
the motherfucker in the galaxy. Oh, here's Cell.
Yeah, exactly. And then Boo, and then
and now I'm at the beginning of the Boo saga. Like, is Measuring Boo the baddest motherfucker around now?
And then Vegeta's son from the future, just like, oh, this guy's a bitch.
Basically.
And their Cell.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing is that you know, that's kind of the Shonen Jump model now. When you look at like Bleach or a lot of those other animes, it's the same fucking thing. This person's the most dangerous thing ever, except right after you barely pull out a victory against them. Next week, that wasn't the baddest guy. This other guy is the baddest guy, and it's just on and on and on. The power creep, so to speak. And that's the thing is that, but with making that into a video game, is that again, like Goku has only struggled to defeat these guys because his power level is kind of you know, always matched to theirs, and then he just barely squeezes them out type of thing. Whereas if you took, say, for example, the Goku from the Buu saga and faced him against Vegeta from the, you know, wasn't that called like just the Saiyan saga? I think it was just called the Saiyan saga.
I'm right at the beginning of the Buu saga, where they turn Vegeta against Goku.
Yeah,
right at the beginning of that.
Yeah, so like if you are not Vegeta, but Raditz even if you versed
Raditz was trash though.
But not for against Goku from that era. He couldn't even hold out. It was Piccolo that actually ended up beating him with Goku's help. But if you took Goku from the Buu saga versus Raditz from the Saiyan saga, it like the power level would just be not even balanced at all. That's the trick of the video games, is you have to like pair them off in their, I guess, their respective peaks. In any case though, Superman though, I've always found him to be a boring ass superhero, because it's always like and I've said this to Xaiphen, I don't know how many times he's heard me say this. He always felt like two like little kids, 10-year-old kids on a playground having an argument. Oh yeah, well, Superman can do this. That's literally what his power set sounds like. Oh yeah, well he's super strong.
That's actually a very valid point, because I used to always say Superman was boring too, and it's like I like Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Clark Kent is interesting. The same way I think Bruce Wayne is interesting, but I think Batman is actually like one of the best superheroes.
Batman in the comics
is actually interesting.
Batman in the comics and some of Batman in some of the shows that he's been in, I like. The movies, I feel like they always butcher Batman. The reason why is either he's just a violent vigilante that beats the shit out of people, or he's some rich playboy that just doesn't have a fucking clue, but has rubber nipples apparently. You know, like they never get the most important facet of Batman right, and that's that he is a genius and a brilliant detective. Those are like his two biggest features that never get talked about in any movies you see, because that's not pretty. doing detective work and putting together stuff. That's not cool.
I mean, I don't even want to talk about superheroes getting butchered in movies, because I've always complained about Donatello from the Ninja Turtles. They always butcher Donatello.
Well,
like the new ones.
No, any of them.
Michael Bay's.
You know, I'm a massive Ninja Turtles fan. I've always been. If you actually like go through and you read all the comics and you watch all the shows and everything, you get a really good feel for what their personality should be. Michael Bay one is terrible. They just made him into Urkel.
No, like the first one, the second one was
he just sat in the back of the room quietly.
Yeah, the second one was a slightly better movie overall, story-wise, and because I was just happy that they actually brought out Kang rather than just making it all about Shredder like the original movies were. You know,
also, when I said the first one, he sat in the back quietly, I was talking about the original 1990
movie. No. I'm talking about Michael Bay's two movies.
Turtles movie, period.
Yeah, like Michael Bay's nonsense. The first movie, I was just literally like, so this is fucking Transformers with some Ninja Turtles in it, because the moment Shredder comes out in this fucking,
because it had just the combat. I think the first one had much more entertaining combat.
But there was you literally had he even threw in the fucking Transformer sound effects.
I'm
like
agreement with you.
Shredder's just going like, I'm like, no, I'm done. You've lost me. You've got Optimus fucking Shredder on here.
I don't even watch like the first 45 minutes of the movie. I always skip to the part where they find them in the sewer. Is watch it from then on. That's when the movie gets really good.
And
all
it's
the
like,
other shit beforehand, I could care
and it's like
about.
they are trying desperately to make April an integral part of the story. And let's be honest, she's never been important at all. But the main, well, I shouldn't say that. She has been important, not in the action parts of it, but what she did for the Ninja Turtles, at least in the cartoons I remember, was she was always finding the shit out for them. She was their eyes and ears on the ground. She was a brilliant investigative journalist and could dig up the dirt on people.
In the 80s cartoon, yeah. I think the 4Kids series from 2004 is heavily slept on. It's probably the second best Turtles incarnation.
Okay, I'm more used to the 80s Turtles ones. I never saw the 2000s ones.
Yeah, if you look at the 2000 ones, look at the current IDWs. The current IDW comics are amazing. You look at those, and what was the other? Even the one that they just canceled on Nickelodeon was actually really good at times. The 80s one is just it doesn't hold up anymore.
Well, I think a lot of it is that I felt like April, well, because Michael Bay loves, showing off, what's her name, ass everywhere. He just likes having Megan Fox bend over in tight jeans.
Who doesn't?
But no, like unfortunately, as a result,
like watching Megan Fox bend over.
The problem is that it essentially makes it so that her character is inevitably going to be botched.
Yeah. Because
she's there as eye candy, not as an actual character. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Megan Fox is actually extremely fucking critical of Hollywood, because she's more or less like, yeah, I'm a good-looking girl, and that's all that any of them ever fucking see. I'm pretty certain that she probably has a pretty low opinion of Michael Bay, because that's all he's ever used her for.
Oh, yeah, it's always been to, hey, look at me, I'm attractive.
Yeah. But in any case, though, I think that I honestly wish that, I don't remember, what was it? Was it Telltale or no? It was Machine Games, right? That did the Ninja Turtles game not long ago. Or no, it wasn't it Machine Games? Who the fuck did the Ninja Turtles game about a year or two ago?
SNES one.
Yeah. No,
Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time. That was on the 360. That was 4 years ago when they did the remaster of that.
No, I'm talking about they redid a new one. It was by a company that does a lot of kind of fight games. I thought it was, I can't remember who it was.
Are you talking about the one that the really bad one?
Yeah, that tanked.
Yeah. I forget who made it. I'd have to look it up. But it's
It was Platinum. It was Platinum.
Platinum Games, yeah.
Yeah, it was Platinum. That's who it was.
Yeah, I remember everybody was like, Platinum's always hit or miss because the Transformers game they made was great. What people say it was. Everybody loves Bayonetta.
Yeah,
And
but
that Turtles game was like, yeah.
they tanked that horribly. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh man, this is perfect." I feel like we really need a good Turtles game.
It's so bad that I forgot about it, and I'm thinking back to the indie one. You guys remember that indie Ninja Turtles game they put out a few years ago?
Yep.
I still love that game.
So that's why I think that we need a new TMNT game to come out that's actually good, and that Donatello actually is like your crafter guy, and he makes a bunch of shit. And
well,
then
Donatello's a mechanic.
Yeah,
that was always his stick.
That would actually be a good idea, is have a TMNT RPG style game.
There you go. Like kind of like Final Fantasy 15, where you have the 4 Backstreet Boys.
You know that'll piss people off more than when they got put in Injustice. Even though if you've read the comics, they've been in like 3 or 4 Batman comics. Like Turtles don't belong here. They've been fucking with Batman for 3-4 years.
Actually started off of Daredevil. Because like in the origin of the Turtles, like they showed the truck that dumped the mutagen into the sewer, hit a kid, or dumped some of it on a kid first.
I feel like that might have been someone that might have been fan fiction.
It was actually revealed to be like a unobvious ripoff. Well,
I can see that. I don't think they're in the same universe.
Like, wasn't Marvel that made the Turtles? It was somebody else.
It was Dark Horse, wasn't it?
It was an independent guys, Mirage Studio.
Oh, okay, Mirage. Yeah.
Studios like to rip each other off. I mean, left and right. DC ripped off Marvel. Marvel ripped off DC.
Deadpool versus Deathstroke. Come on now, that was the most obvious one. But then you had so essentially Marvel ripped off Deathstroke to make Deadpool, but I feel like Deadpool, like that's got to be the most insulting part, huh?
Deadpool's a better character.
Yeah, that's got to be the most insulting part though for DC, is that they ripped off Deathstroke and made Deadpool better and a more well-liked. He's a more popular and better liked character than Deathstroke, and I feel like that's got to be
like angry and powerful and can't be killed, and Deadpool is like, I don't give a fuck.
No, well, I mean, Deathstroke is, yeah. I feel like he doesn't have, like, essentially, Deadpool was intended to be a parody character, which is why he was kind of broke the fourth wall and all that shit, and then ended up becoming massive, like the super thing. But then you had the DC ripoff Captain Marvel, which that was amazing. They also had a ripoff of Captain America, who was like, I think Captain Britain or something like that. I'm not kidding.
Captain Canada, wasn't it?
Captain Canada, that's what it was. Well, no, I feel like I might be getting that backwards because Captain Canada's in our Discord. So.
No, I think there actually was Captain Canada.
Yeah, there might have been. I know there was some really gross ripoff, and it was just like, oh my. But they've gone back and forth. In any case, going back to Superman and how boring he is to watch.
It's boring too, but for a different reason. It's not because of the he can do this. For me, my point of view on why he's boring is he's morally incorruptible. Unlike Batman, who has gone through this like, should I or shouldn't I? Like, if I kill this person, it'll solve the problem permanently. Whereas, like, but I can't kill people. He's got that inner turmoil.
I feel
Superman's very black and white.
Well, the thing is, though, is that I feel like that's the reason why all the Superman fans are angry that everybody keeps going with this dark Superman, like, kind of experience.
It's more entertaining.
Yeah, it's because it's more compelling. It's a more compelling character.
An example of this is like, or an interesting analogy would be getting into Greek mythology. Okay, almost everybody that knows any little bit about Greek mythology knows about Achilles and how much of a badass he was and all that stuff. During that same period of time, there was another guy that was even far more badass than he was into the mythological portion of it, to the point in which he, fought and won against 2 gods. Damocles, I believe his name was.
Yeah.
Like, and also his greatest attribute that was claimed about him is he had no hubris. So he was totally awesome. He was a king that fought in the wars instead of just telling people to fight for him. He went and fought, and he was badass at this. And he didn't feel the need to conquer. He was just there to fight and take care of his people, and then that was it. And he went home, went back to being a king and taking care of his people, and that's all there was to it. And he was boring. even though he was more badass than Achilles, he was not it was not an entertaining story as Achilles, avenging the death of his cousin.
Lover. It was his fucking lover. Oh god, that was the part in the movie. Like, I don't really care about a whole lot, but come on, guys. Like that nowadays that shit wouldn't fly.
Yeah,
like you'd have a lot of those.
It's even more hilarious. Like the whole what is it, 80s era movie or 90s era movie of the old guy that's taking his niece out on a date.
Yeah. Or, well, like I said, but there's also like that sounds like someone who's still in the closet trying to explain why they are always with this really attractive and well manicured man. It's like, oh, he's my cousin, and of course, then that cousin looks at him like, the fuck. I'm not your cousin.
Achilles was, had a lot more of that inner turmoil that made him an interesting character.
Yeah.
That Macleod didn't. And that's like looking at, Batman versus Superman as a raw example, even though they're not exactly the same skills, whatever. At any rate, that's my view on it.
On a small note of the mythology on there, in the story of the Trojan War, Achilles was a far more compelling character, whereas in the movie, Hector was the far more compelling character. He felt like he had a lot more of an inner turmoil, and like you kind of, even though you knew they were gonna lose and whatnot, you kind of felt the need to root most of the time for the Trojans. And it was kind of like, cool. But you had essentially Achilles and Hector and Paris were always like the ones that were talking sense, like, no, we shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. And the kings are like, we're gonna do it anyway, and then shit explodes in their face, and that keeps happening over and over again, and you're just like, this is like a fucking train wreck.
Memnon, it's like, your order, sir. What should we do?
No, that was like the, what the fuck was that word that you just said, Agamemnon? I really don't like real life. Like, okay, so real life. What's his name gets killed? What's the king of Sparta? I can't remember his name. He gets killed, and his brother makes that noise, that, and everybody's just like, so do we charge?
What was that?
What's your charge?
I don't know what that word was. That was just kind of an incoherent, like, exclamation. All right, anyway, back to games. I think we've gone off the deep end enough here. So
we've been on for almost 40 minutes talking about anime and comic books,
Ninja Turtles, and all the good shit. Right? That's where really good stuff is at. In any case, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about on here that was kind of interesting. This will be a short little piece on here, but talking about the Steam hardware survey, and the most interesting point I wanted to point out, obviously people can talk about the AMD versus Intel versus NVIDIA bullshit. I don't care. At this point, I think you notice, I think that those, especially the NVIDIA versus AMD on the graphics card front, it's not even a fair comparison, because I think a lot of those hardware surveys are showing NVIDIA with such a dominant position because of mining. Because the AMD cards aren't.
NVIDIA's been dominant for a while now, even before mining.
It's increased drastically since December. But then again, also a lot of the results are a little skewed because of the drastic influx of Chinese players. And when I mean drastic influx, I mean as of right now, 2/3 of Steam players are Chinese. And the other 30 some odd % is divided up amongst US and Europe and everywhere else in the world. Literally, China makes up now 2/3 of Steam. Like, it's completely all the results for like the main language spoken on Steam is now like 64% Chinese. The dominant operating system is now like 70% or something Windows 7, which all of that spike happened with the launch of PUBG in December. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that's helpful for game developers? Because that's what the hardware survey's for, right? It helps game developers kind of gear their focus. Do you think that is going to be something that hardware developers will change their focus on now that there's that huge influx of that untapped market in China?
Hang tight 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess Kev doesn't have anything to say on it.
He's just like, peace.
He's like, I don't want to talk about Chinese.
I want to say yes and no. Obviously, it's not false statistics. I mean, there's those machines out there. Whether or not they're active players or bots running these machines or whatever, but it does make some, a certain amount of difference. The catch is if these game developers if they're trying to localize to, a specific geographic market, or if they're trying to hit worldwide. If they're trying to hit worldwide, then of course they're going to have to kind of take the leaning of the Steam statistics a lot more seriously. If they're looking at a more localized market, specific to wherever, like say if it's a Japanese developer and they're trying to focus more on Japan, then they need to, filter out a lot of those statistics.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Kev? Do you think that the massive influx of Chinese players is something that developers will start to focus on in the future?
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I think the Chinese market for video games has always been a little funny, or not even funny. Like, you don't really hear about them. You always hear about Japan.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about the Korean game bars. You don't really hear a lot about China. I know consoles were banned from China forever, and only recently started getting them. I think they were getting like the Xbox One first, and it was not a big thing. So I don't know. I think it's becoming now they see that people love gaming in China. China's one of the biggest in terms of population countries in the world. So I wonder if you're going to start seeing like maybe even more Chinese developers that are making games for focused on the Chinese audience, just like everyone else. That's what I think you probably see a lot more.
Well, that's what currently has been in existence up to now, as far as I understand, is that the market has been rather insular. Like essentially, you had Chinese developers and Chinese publishers, and they were kind of their own ecosystem. And PUBG kind of seems to have been the hammer that shattered that window and kind of broke things open largely. My thing is that this is a little bit of the general knowledge from the tech industry on there, is a lot of companies realize just how lucrative the Chinese market is on a corporate level, especially in the United States. But there are usually extreme costs to doing business in China. Most notably is that oftentimes they will be forced by the Chinese government to work with local Chinese companies. That dramatically increases the risks of IP theft. And in general, intellectual property is not very well respected in China, and almost always it is forced out of companies that want to do business there. So it's pretty much like it's like you want to do business in China, great. It's not going to last very long because local companies are
going to like your shit.
Yeah, everybody's going to steal your shit and make their own. So as game development companies, want to do business in there, the risk they run is having to work with local Chinese game developers and game publishers to localize the game. In doing so allows them to create rip-off games, and there's no real recourse for those companies. I think that's a lot of the reasons why a lot of Western game developers in Europe and the United States and Canada and so on have been hesitant to do business over there. Because even with PUBG, there are actually Chinese rip-off PUBG games already. Like, it's a thing. And I feel like...
I'm surprised that it was. It's going to be a thing for a while.
Yeah, and obviously then we also talk about the cheating issue, where now you have a huge amount of cheaters that are coming from China just because of how many Chinese players there are. It's not that all Chinese players are cheating, as I kind of said before. It's that because of that Chinese players are like account for 60% or 66% of all players on Steam. 99% of the cheaters in PUBG are from China, and that's like,
and it's just a numbers thing.
That's just because of how many Chinese players there are. Of course, that's going to happen. But that's the thing is because of those sheer numbers, that does I guess benefit BattlEye. BattlEye's business is a booming. Everybody's picking up BattlEye. But yeah, so do you guys?
It's one of those times where, as much as everybody complains about De Novo, De Novo probably does eliminate a lot of cheating.
No, it doesn't. De Novo's cracked. Every time they release a new version of De Novo, it's cracked within a month. That's more of piracy prevention, not modification prevention. You actually need a cheat engine or cheat prevention system. And De Novo doesn't really offer a compelling option for that. BattlEye is the one who is really the dominant force. You've noticed all of the major esport brands, Overwatch, Rainbow Six Siege, I think PUBG now uses BattlEye. All the big PvP games now are using all BattlEye. He's the big dog in town. And I'm like, dude, their business exploded from PUBG. But yeah, so... So do you guys think that that we'll see more Chinese games coming over to the West as a result of this?
I think we are, like, I'm starting to notice, like, I've seen like quite a few Chinese RPGs popping up on Steam. I think it's a matter of, and I'll always say this, in the West, consoles are kind of king in terms of where people are at, where you're going to get your eyes at. I think that's the question. Is it going to end up on a console? If it's not going to end up on consoles in the West, I don't think you're going to get as many eyes, especially with the oversaturation of games on Steam.
It's just a matter of if it's gonna be that noticeable. Like Japanese development and publishers, that's much more noticeable big thing. People make a bigger deal of it because there's the association with the Japanese video game development, just like there's the association with U.S. video game development. You start taking other countries pretty much away from those two big ones right there, people are not going to pay attention as much. Like, oh, Ukraine's making video games? Who cares? Or China, or
Poland's making video games?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
the CD Projekt Red has been.
For the first world country like Germany or Great Britain, it's not going to, turn as many heads as Japan or the U.S.
Yeah, so that's I'm kind of looking forward to seeing if we actually do see some quality competition coming from China, but I do disagree with the point that consoles are king in that regard. I think that consoles do get a fair share of publicity, to be certain, but I think statistics show that there are a lot more PC gamers at various levels of play than there are console players, by a lot. So I think that in that regard, if you can correctly market to the PC audience, I think that there's a potential for any company to get big. But do they really need it? Because Chinese, obviously, if they're already selling in the Chinese market, that is the world's largest consumer market, right? Like 1.6 or 1.7 billion people.
According to the Steam results.
Yeah, like that, that influx of Chinese characters so dramatically dwarfed everything from the West, like in such a massive way. I kind of feel like the game makers in China don't really need the West. They can sell games in China and be even more successful. I don't know, but let's shift on there, because I don't know how many any other thoughts on the Steam survey that you guys wanted to mention.
Nope. I just hope console players don't start reading them and start misconstruing the numbers again.
Yeah, they always will. So, so we got.
You can't play at 1080p.
Right. There was also another one on here, and this one is kind of interesting because I think this is something that it may happen, and I'm surprised that it hasn't come up already. But what do you guys think about the idea of video game developers like the actual low-level developers unionizing. And that would include not just developers, I should say, that would include developers as well as probably voice actors and other people being more union focused and actually, you know, I think, well, the voice actors are already unionized, but developers are not.
Voice actors as actors, I mean, you know, it depends on if they're like part of this development studio. If they're voice acting as a regular employee of the studio, like say DE, you know, their voice actors are in-house. But if it's somebody that, you know, is a more popular name or an outright motion picture actor that they hire on, you know, they don't really, they're kind of outside of the loop when it comes to something like that. But as far as the general studios, unionization, I don't know what the working conditions are like in a majority of these studios. I can see it as a fair possibility if it is that bad. I don't work in the studios, so I don't know exactly what it's like, and I don't talk to a lot of people who do work in those studios.
So I do have a bit of knowledge on their working conditions. Now, the hyperbolic example does happen a lot, but it's something that you should realize that people should realize is not the case everywhere, but especially with a lot of the AAA games development where they have like essentially especially if you are an independent studio doing work for hire work, or if you are owned by a AAA publisher, a lot of the problem that you run into is the milestone bulk payments. And essentially what that means is once you meet certain milestone deadlines as a developer studio, you will get funded a certain chunk of money. Right, you'll receive.
It's like how they say, "Oh yeah, you'll get this much money if you get this on Metacritic," kind of thing.
Well, no. It's more along the lines of, okay, this measure of the game is how we determine that the game is 25% complete. Once you hit 25% completion, then we'll pay you $5 million, right? Then you reach 50% completion, we'll pay you another $5 million. 75% completion, another $5 million, so on. And essentially that's used for continuing expenditure budgets. So how that works is when the game is first, and I'm not going to go into the finances too much because I don't want people to fall asleep, but whenever a game is first pitched to a publisher, essentially how they pitch it is that here's what we expect it to cost. And essentially what happens is, especially if they're owned by a AAA publisher, not doing work for hire, but if they're owned by, essentially they'll say, okay, so we've got this X budget, and then the checks actually get cut. Like one gets cut to start with, usually to get them going, and then they will continue to cut checks and milestones. Usually, and in some cases, those milestone checks increase based upon the idea that the studio will be kind of fattening up their workforce to get more developers on towards the end of development. The reason why is because towards the end of development, you usually have what's known as crunch time. And that crunch time is whenever they have all hands on deck trying to get all the last things put together to hurry up and meet the release deadline, which is the main deadline that matters. Right. The problem is that oftentimes there's been reports of up to 18-hour work days, like 100+ hour work weeks for a developer, and
damn,
yeah, like you're talking, you are sleeping in the fucking office. And now you go to a lot of game dev schools, and this was a kind of a public debate point that I had with Tucker from a Bioware follower, is
now did he actually respond to you?
Yeah, we've gone back and forth a few times actually. So here's the thing: is that he's been told by a lot of his instructors at game design school that, oh yeah, people work these long hours because they're so passionate about the game, and I'm like, yes, but it's also because it's like a socially indoctrinated concept. Right, this is how the things work, and this is how things are going to be, and you know, this is how you determine your passion for the game is working long hours. In indie development, I can totally see that. If it's like us three working on a game together and we're working long ass hours, but it's just us three, right? Yeah, I can see that. That totally makes sense. But if you're working at a studio with, 300, 500, 1,000 fucking employees, and every fucking one of them is working 10 plus 20 or 10 to 15 hour days, you're doing shit wrong. Like, there's no reason for that. Like, that makes no sense. And this is why and everybody agrees that it's a disgusting business practice, and that's where I think this push is coming from. And I was it's interesting to me, and I kind of wanted to hear you guys' thoughts of, like, do you guys think that unionization would help, or if something else would be a better idea?
I do like the idea of unionization. I'm usually not super crazy about unions because I feel like the union usually doesn't look out for the people the way they're supposed to.
Well,
but
it depends on how much the politicians are paying them.
Yeah. I've had bad experience with unions, where they just did not look out for the people at all. They just took your money and said, "Well, screw you." So my experience is kind of like, well, the game industry is already designed to really screw over the everybody, basically.
Yeah, everybody but the executives.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's corporate business these days.
Yep.
How can I make the most money and screw you over without realizing I'm screwing you over? Like, I was talking to my father last night. He's culinary chef. That's what he does. He's a cook. And but he, like, went to culinary school, all this other shit. And even then, like, he goes to restaurants. He sees, like, all the corners they cut that they didn't used to cut back in the day, where he says, like, I can't even go and eat out, because he realizes that the food that you eat in restaurants is crap now.
In a lot of places,
and I think the same goes with games in any kind of industry you're in. When you're that heavily invested into it, things go to shit.
Yeah, I think that's a risk you run, though, is that, like, cutting corners or getting deeply involved. But now, what do you think is as a solution? Actually, first, Xaiphen, do you think that unionization would be a good solution for them?
Right now, yes. And the problems that we see with unions is the institutionalized unions, the ones that have been around for so long, the industry standardized unions. That's the problems that a lot of the union issues that you run into is because the union, as like the history, the too big to fail or whatever, like, we can't get rid of a union. We've always been here. You go to work at a certain factory and it's, the union standardized. If you don't pay your union dues into it, then you can't even work at that place. That's where unions have become a problem. But places that, unions in their infancy start with good intentions, and like in their infancy, they do help. They do work well. And starting up a union in this industry will start off helping. Over the long term, it will cause problems. If the problems will outweigh the benefits, I'm not sure. But to start out, it will start out with good intentions, and in its infancy, I think it will help things out quite a bit.
Now, as a counter question to that, I kind of can see the both points of concerns that unions pose. Do you guys think that there might be a better solution?
I don't know. I mean, the best solution, be to stop, trying to fuck people, because, consent is a thing. Yeah.
But not necessarily.
Consent is a thing. So stop fucking people. They don't like it. That's probably the best solution. But they're not going to do that because, they're rapey and they like fucking people.
But an alternative solution, not necessarily better, would be government regulations on labor involved in that.
Yeah.
See, I don't trust the government enough to fix it because the government's rapey too.
Yeah, exactly. That's where people talk about, like, regulating loot boxes. I'm like, I really hope the government doesn't, because the government has demonstrated they have no fucking clue about anything about video games.
They don't have
anything about anything.
On top of that, the biggest voice that they hear comes from lobbyists.
Yep.
So
the biggest voice they hear is the biggest check.
Favor of the executives, not the laborers.
Well,
and that's where you get the benefit of, at least, and it's again starting up. The benefit of the union is it's the collective of the people, you know, the laborers that are trying to start up those, you know, standards.
Yeah, the only concern that I ever have about about unions is that unions sometimes breed a harmful social environment where essentially, like, the whole for example, a strike. A strike is a brilliant concept and idea of essentially the workers saying, hey, we're your lifeblood, we have the power, you need to respect us a little bit more. But what it turns into is you have essentially a, like, say, for example, a greedy union. A union gets too greedy, doesn't like the way that an executive talks to them, and they make their workers strike as their own political, you know, force, essentially. And that's where I feel like there's a problem, where you essentially end up with this socio-political group that doesn't have an individual identity, and I feel like that's the problem. There's some people that might enjoy working those long hours. I personally cannot fathom it. It sounds disgusting to me, and I guarantee you in 99% of the cases, it's just a case of, you know, a corporation exploiting its workers, right? But there may be someone out there that actually really likes it.
I don't know. This week we had some issues at work. I can't really get into that, but I've been working 12-hour days all week up until like Thursday. That's just not fun. I can't imagine everybody doing that shit every day.
Yeah. And there, well, no, there's even more than that. Like I said, there's some cases where it's 18-hour days. You're not going home with that. You're sleeping in the fucking office. That's not, to me, that is so toxic, so bad. I can't even fathom that in my brain.
You don't go home for weeks at a time.
Like, I'm a salaried worker, which often means that, you know, I get paid for 40 hours a week and I work on average 50. Yeah, I get that. That's not necessarily cool, and I feel like that, you know, people should get paid more for that sort of thing. But you know what? That is the kind of level of tolerance I have. Now, if they're paying me for 40 hours a week and they're working me 100 hours a week, nope, I'm gone. I'm out the fucking door. That's, to me, just gross abuse.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, if unionization, that's one option. To me, honestly, I feel like that another option would be that all of these corporate-owned developers need to walk the fuck out the door, go found their own new independent studios. And that's where Kevin and I have that disagreement of, like, you argue that Microsoft should buy up more studios. I think they all should leave the corporate.
That's not no. What I think you keep missing. You're saying, like, I'm gonna go buy out all the indies. I'm but I'm saying specific ones.
Yeah, specific ones that work on dedicated Xbox properties. Still,
right. Like, I wouldn't have a problem with the guys that made Cuphead, the guys that made Ori, and the guys that are making what was the one that we were talking about, State of Decay.
Yeah,
Kev, you are right. If we're looking at an executive point of view, if you know you're high up in the ladder in Microsoft, that's what you would actually want to do. If you're looking at, like, consumer level and the studio level, we don't want that shit.
Yeah, like, it would be healthier for the overall market of games, both from the consumer side and the development side, if developers were all independent. And then you had the publishers there. Yeah, the publishers can still stay there to be the bank rolls behind some of these games that can't get crowdfunded for whatever reason. That's fine, but do all work for hire. The reason why is because that encourages a more competitive environment from publishers, right? So if I have a great game idea, I can go to multiple publishers and make them bid on it. You know what I mean? Like, I can make them compete.
It gives you an investor situation. I get it.
Yeah. Or
publishers like investors.
Yeah. So exactly.
You as a developer, though, you want to have that Steve Jobs working for your team as well. Because it can't be all the techies trying to sell your shit, because they're not necessarily going to communicate that as well as an official sales rep. Yep. You know, you need to have a sales rep on your team to make that work.
And usually the general manager or whatever the head of your studio is, or someone high up in the leadership ladder, is usually that salesman guy. Like, for example, I would say he's the what's the guy for Bethesda Game Studios? Is it Pete Hines? Is he the guy that's... He's not the VP guy, right? He's the actual...
He's like the face guy.
Yeah, like he's kind of your salesman, right? He goes out and he says, look at this amazing thing, and he gets all fired up, right? And he gets everybody hyped for the game.
He's their Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah.
His body isn't ready.
But no, that's what a studio would need. Yeah, you can talk techie, but you need someone who, A, first of all, can kind of correctly relay the passion of the project, but also relay money. What's the return on investment here? Because obviously, if a publisher giving you money, they want that ROI. But I think that in doing that, then you have game developers who are constantly striving to find the next big thing, right? They're trying to find this awesome idea. So you have, in general, developers constantly striving to find their creative passion, which then leads to better game quality overall, rather than this kind of bland, corporatized, over-monetized bullshit that you have now. And then that benefits the consumer. I think overall, if all studios were independent, it would be better. You can still have the publishers. The publishers just don't own studios anymore. They're an independent entity. And that's kind of my viewpoint on it. And I think that would largely probably, that has the potential for lessening this kind of work environment that we have. But it may not fix it. And that's where my idea here doesn't really hold a lot of water. It may not fix it. I don't know. My thought. And then Kev's most, the story Kev is most excited about today, I know, because he's really upset that they took out the pay-to-win elements out of Star Wars Casino Front 2. He's really, he was raging all morning about it, and he was like, but I want to gamble and be more powerful than other people.
No, I want to play it on PS4 because it's on sale for $20 and smack around some kids. Smack them.
But yeah, in any case, though, Battlefront 2. So Battlefront 2 has redone their, and I haven't been able to find out some specifics. I'll get to that. But so Battlefront 2 has remapped or kind of re-engineered their monetization model, where it's all aesthetics. You no longer can do like starred cards have to be earned with your character level, like a normal fucking game would be, and then you get like just aesthetic stuff. The key is, what I'm not sure of is that everywhere I've seen reported, and I kind of feel like this is a little bit concerning to me, everywhere it reports it, words it like this, where, oh, now you buy aesthetic stuff with either in-game credits or real money. They don't say how you buy them. Are you still buying them from loot boxes, or do you buy the skins directly? And I think that's...
No, they've gotten rid of the loot boxes entirely from what I've read.
So there are no loot boxes.
Microtransactions, like 360 days.
Okay, so it's literally like, I want a skin, I buy that skin directly.
That's what I've read. That's what I've
Good God, praise this game. It got shit done right. That
see, we're gonna find out soon. I do plan on grabbing it. Probably it's on sale on PSN over the weekend. I just haven't picked it up yet.
I'm all for that. I will. That's my seal of approval right there. Direct buy microtransactions, I think, are the best way. I'm not against loot boxes entirely, but I think that direct buy is better route.
Yeah, I think it really depends. Like, I didn't like the way they did pay to win. I'm curious about how the progression works now. Like, I don't want it to be as grindy as it still was. Like, I hope they changed the progression so now I can like progress at a regular pace. Like, that'll be nice. But it is something that, I really want to get into now, And then I'm just thinking like, well, where am I going to find time to play it in between Persona and Splatoon and Zelda?
And it's not on Switch, is it?
Decade's about to come out.
Is it on?
I want to play Ni no Kuni and Final Fantasy still.
But I don't think it's on.
Cuphead.
It's not on Switch though, is it?
What?
Battlefront 2.
No, it's on everything but Switch. Switch can't run that.
Unacceptable. I'm never playing it because it's not on Switch. I'm just kidding. I don't even have a Switch.
I was about to say, you've been saying all the time that you like what they're doing with the Switch. Why haven't you picked one up yet?
Because, like, at what point do I have I guess my thing is, what offer, like, what benefit do I have to buy it right now? I recommend other people buy it because I do agree with it, but do I need to buy it myself? No.
Mm-hmm.
Just because
I guess it's a different perspective too, because I get it. You buy for the sake of the hardware and then buy the software for it. I buy it for the sake of the software and then the hardware is just something else to it.
My main reason why is because I personally, I think that if a piece of software has a multi-$100 piece of hardware attached to it, mandatory, it better be a goddamn good piece of hardware, which the PS4 and the Xbox One are not. The Switch is, so if I want Breath of the Wild, or I want Mario Odyssey, or one of these the big Nintendo games that come with a Switch attached to them, I'm like, okay, the Switch is actually compelling to me as a hardware piece. I just personally don't have a motivation to buy it right now, but if I'm talking to someone else, I'll be like, no, I can actually kind of feel like that's I feel like that's a good thing to recommend people buy, even though I may not buy it. Whereas Xbox One, PS4, if I'm buying a game that has a few $100 piece of hardware attached to it, those are just not compelling to me as a buy, so I don't recommend them. The PC is not software with hardware attached because the software is so goddamn variable. Same with the hardware. Like, it's hard to figure out which one comes in front of the other, so that's a difficult one.
That's what I say. It really depends. Like, for me, for example, I buy PlayStation and Nintendo for the most part because I like their software.
Mm-hmm.
The hardware is whatever to me. In fact, like, people were talking about like how much they love the innovative Nintendo hardware. I hate those damn Joy-Cons. I don't use that thing as a portable controller. I use it with this constantly.
Yeah, but you can still use it portable.
I play it like a regular ass console.
Yeah, but you can still use it portable though. You can just.
I don't.
No.
Because the Joy-Cons hurt my hands.
No, I'm saying, like, can you use that controller, that Pro controller, while it's undocked out of the dock?
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah. Like, you can sit up in your bed, your wife is watching TV next to you or whatever, and you sit up on the bed with some headphones plugged into the Switch and sit there with it in your lap and play it with the normal controller.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you can't do with a PlayStation or Xbox, or PC for that matter. That's what I'm saying. As a hardware argument, it offers something that none of the other consoles, including PC, offer. That's where I'm going with that.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, you could do a PS4, but then you'd have to buy a Vita, and at that point, it's like, why buy the hardware for that sake?
Yeah, no, exactly. And at that point, you have to buy two pieces of hardware in order to match what one does for Nintendo. So that's
right.
Again,
same with PC, because like I have a Stream Deck that I can do that with.
Yeah, you can do the you could get the NVIDIA Shield, the NVIDIA Shield tablet. You can do that with PC as well. But again, like I said, and that also predicates on having a good internet connection in your house because you're streaming it from your computer. But
you're not streaming it through the internet though.
No, but
it's only on your local area network, so you don't really have to have a great internet connection. Just Ethernet it all up.
Not the.
You don't like.
Oh, not the NVIDIA Shield.
Internet. It's the network. However you set it up, either by wire or wireless. Like for me, I can do the Steam in-home game streaming very well because I have a small house and very strong wireless router. So, that works wirelessly for me because I stream over 5 gigahertz and over the course of up to, it's never further than 20 feet. And there's no other interference on that band, so I get a good, strong wireless signal. That works great for me. But that's a top-end router is what's running all that.
Yeah.
Whereas if your router's not top-end but good enough, then, of course, you Ethernet it all up so you don't have to worry about wireless issues. Or if you've got range issues, then wireless is only going to work so well, so on and so forth.
But trying to get the form factor of a Switch, utilizing the PC or PS4, and Xbox has absolutely nothing to offer in that regard.
You can do that on other Microsoft devices.
Well,
so you can do it
that's right, because
on a Surface, or you can do it on a Windows phone.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. I have a Windows phone that I've never even done.
You can do it too. I believe it's compatible with streaming through the Xbox app, which I think is on Mac.
I have no
Actually,
idea.
no, it's not. No, it's only on Windows 10. My bad.
I was
my
gonna
bad.
say I'm pretty certain the Xbox is relegated to only Microsoft products.
No, I'm thinking of PS Now. I'm thinking of PS Now, where that's on PC and Mac. You can stream that way.
Yeah, that requires an internet connection.
But all that requires a lot of additional pieces and has a lot of variability to it. Whereas your Switch, you don't need anything else. You just need a Switch. You know, you don't even need an internet connection technically. You know, unless you're.
No, when I took me and my wife, we went out for our anniversary earlier this month. She likes to do art, so she took her art stuff with her, and I took my Switch.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, you could technically, I've done it with the original Xbox, OG Xbox. Xaiphen and I both can speak about lugging those things around with our little fucking little tiny multi
carrier for that thing.
God damn, that was good times. But we would lug around our Xbox's controllers, and I had a little 4-port unmanaged Switch that we would plug in for Xboxes too. We'd have like LAN parties with that shit. Yeah, you can do that, but good God, lugging around an Xbox is not exactly convenient. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. But
I mean, it's not like, you know, like I can't find my Switch case right now, but I have a case. I just put my Switch in it that has all my connections for it, so I have like the wall wart so I can charge it and all that shit.
Yeah.
Throw it all in the bag. Hell, I have a car charger for my Switch.
Yeah, like I said, from a hardware standpoint, it is a very compelling device, and that's where my argument against Xbox and PlayStation generally is because, as a PC owner, what does Xbox and PC offer that I don't already have on PC? And that's where the position I have. If you already have an Xbox, what does PC offer you? Well, PC offers you
PC offers a lot more benefits than the Xbox does. Like, I have the One X. I like the One X, and I'm primarily play my Microsoft games on the One X because I don't like dealing with the Windows Store.
Yeah, no. What I mean is so if you look at,
but I'm saying if you don't mind dealing with the Windows Store,
yeah,
don't buy an Xbox. There's no apps. And I'll stand by that. I own the Xbox One X because I like the actual hardware.
Yeah,
I mean, unless you have like friends that play on Xbox, like I have people, of course, that we always play on Xbox. Like sometimes some of those people, I can play like my multiplats with some of them too. But at the end of the day, I don't see a strong reason to have a high-end PC or have an Xbox if you have a high-end PC. If you have an Xbox, I can still justify that PC.
Yeah,
I can't justify the Xbox if you have the high-end PC. Unless you're, like I said, you just don't want to deal with the Windows 10 store, or if you're like me and you're just like, well, I want it because I like consoles.
Yeah, well, and my thing is that the way I do the comparison is that I look at it from different perspectives. So, if I have a PC, what does Xbox offer me that PC doesn't have? What does PlayStation offer me that Xbox doesn't have? What does Switch offer me? And I'm talking as the actual hardware. I'll get to the software in a minute, but you know, as just the hardware sales benefit, what do those guys offer me? Well, Nintendo offers me a portable experience that also kind of integrates with a TV of some sort. So it kind of offers a unique thing that I'm not going to be able to replicate.
I've thought about it as the old school portable experience.
Oh God. Jesus. Yeah.
I gotta pop this bad boy open.
Is that still your your Haji modded Xbox?
No. That was like, there was an Xbox in here once upon a time when I had one in here. It's like a 15-inch screen.
Yeah.
TV.
That's right.
Funny story. While we're talking about this, I'm looking at I'm just looking at my YouTube feed. Austin Evans, tech YouTuber, put out a video this morning building the portable Xbox One.
Yep. And that's been a thing since the original Xbox. That's what he was showing up there. That's for your original Xbox, right, John?
Yeah, I had one 360, the original.
Oh, 360.
Xbox.
Gotcha. But yeah, no, and that's the position I take. And then I reverse it. I say, well, if I own a PlayStation, what does PC offer me? What does Xbox offer me? What does Switch offer me? And I look crossways and say the same thing. Xbox, what does PlayStation offer? What is those from a hardware standpoint?
And you're looking at it purely from a hardware standpoint.
I'll get to the software in a second. When you look at just the hardware offering, if you have I should say a hardware slash game structure platform, taking out the games and just look at the structure by which it supports the games as well, which is technically software as well. But if I look at those, like PC, like if I have a PlayStation, what does PC offer me? Well, it does offer potentially better hardware. That does depend on what you buy. You could have the same, or you could have a little bit less, you could have better. But you have the option to also upgrade in place, one part at a time if you want, which also is a lot cheaper than buying a whole new console.
I've got a little emergency issue here. I'm going to have to drop out of this.
Okay. But in any case, we'll switch it off to the two-host one whenever he drops off there. In any case, whenever I look at where was I going with that? Whenever I look at the benefits and what's offered by your PlayStation versus Xbox, they don't look a lot different for me. Whereas when I look at the comparison of, say, PC, it offers a lot of unique options that the other two consoles don't have. Then when I look at Switch again says, well, I've got this other stuff that I can offer you that, that is not offered anywhere else. So that's kind of where I kind of make the judgment on there. But, like I said, that is to each their own. Kev, I know that you don't like playing with...
we're wrapping up anyway.
Yeah.
So...
But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with the value proposition of those and where I make the judgment. But yeah, so in any case, I do think though that overall that the whole point is that Battlefront is making changes for the better. I think is where we started with that, right?
Right, exactly. Where Battlefront's getting better. I'm probably gonna buy it over the weekend. I did see that it is on sale. Like $24 on all platforms. I want to do a little more research. I want to make sure that the progression's actually been improved, and not that they just got rid of the loot boxes. Because if the progression is still bad, what's the point? Because the original progression was built around the pay to win elements.
Yep, exactly.
So I got to look into that. And then if I see it, I'll probably just grab it on console, just because I don't see the PC community coming back. Like that's one of my biggest frustrations with PC gaming is you get one shot on PC, that's it.
And you know what? I kind of like that because it really kind of makes you say, hey, you need to get your shit together and not try to fuck with people. I kind of feel like that sometimes console players are a little bit too forgiving.
I don't like that because if it's a game that I'm enjoying, for example, Andromeda multiplayer, even though it did have its issues, I still enjoyed the game, and after a couple months, it was extremely difficult to find matches. I can still find matches now, but again, it's fairly difficult. And I still, like, from a gameplay perspective, despite the progression, I still enjoy what the game is. It's still fun to play.
I literally, like, here's the thing, is that I can't argue, like, the gameplay of Andromeda multiplayer was fun to me. I just got so badly burned that fun multiplayer has been completely soured to me.
I completely get it because it pissed me off too.
It's like seeing someone drop a steak that you have on the floor. It's like, if you eat that steak, it's gonna taste just fine. Like, you're not gonna know that it was dropped on the floor by the taste.
But I don't want a steak that's been on the floor.
Exactly. That's kind of the same concept. Is the taste is still gonna be fine. The gameplay I know is gonna be fine. That Microsoft just dropped that steak, or sorry, not Microsoft, EA and BioWare just dropped that steak on the floor and then rubbed their nutsack on it. Like
you could make that argument, but then we go back to Rainbow Six Siege.
Mm-hmm.
You love Rainbow Six Siege. Remember, it came out fucked.
Oh no, and here's the thing:
launch.
is that there's a difference from my personal perspective on there. I wasn't involved with Rainbow Six Siege at launch. Had I been, I might have actually been in the same position with that, where if they were royally
and I was one of those people that were sour about it because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why I don't take to the game as much, on top of the fact that I just find it to be slow.
Yeah. I think I played.
So for me, it was kind of like, well, I've kind of moved on to other games.
Yeah,
give me a reason to come back.
I think did I play it as a demo? I wonder if I was involved in a beta for that, because I know I pretty much I get like beta invites for all of Ubisoft shit. You know, because I think I beta tested Rainbow Six Siege. I also rainbow tested Wildlands and For Honor and The Division. You know, like I beta tested pretty much, I guess, all of their games.
We both did. I think I beta tested all of them but Siege.
Yeah,
I just didn't have time to get into Siege.
And I think that it was interesting to me, but I think that I think it was intimidating. That's the truth of it. It was intimidating to me when it first started out, because I was like, oh man, this is so much new stuff that I don't know what's going on. I don't quite understand this. And then when I came back to it many years later, I still have that certain level of intimidation of that there is so much like tactics and nuance to the way that the PvP element is played. That
PvE, man.
Well, I mean the PvE, I mean it's like you can literally just bum rush the fuck out of people. They're not that great. The zombie mode's good. You would know that if you were here last week.
I didn't even know y'all were getting on, man. Like, I had to go to the ER, and then nobody came back and said, hey, we're getting on tonight, until I'm on playing Killing Floor. Y'all should have jumped into the Killing Floor channel with us.
Yeah, we should have. Like that, honestly, I was debating.
Well, I caught one of my boys from back in my music production days. Shout out to Tasha Rasay. He's actually doing really well. He started Twitch streaming more so seriously recently, and I think he's up to like 150, 200 followers now. Nice. Over the last couple months. And but him and I have always had trouble catching each other. I caught him at the start of his stream. I said, let's just all jump in Discord. Here's some links.
Nice. Yeah, and that's that.
I told those guys, hey, you guys are welcome to come back anytime. Yep.
And that's and at some point we'll try to get more on that. I might like throw down and stream that one of my stream nights. Since like I said, unfortunately, whenever Xaiphen is on for the party streams, since he has a young girl, and that game is pretty explicitly gruesome.
I was gonna ask actually how you guys felt about Vermintide 2.
That's so I'm
That's one that I'd love to stream. I don't know how he feels about it with his daughter.
Yeah, and that's a question we might have to ask him about that. But like, I love the idea of it. The game looks fucking great. I haven't picked it up yet because there was a couple of balance concerns I was reading about it that I was kind of waiting to see how those settled out. But that's probably
I'm on the fence about it. I'm on the fence about it.
The developers from the first game seem to be really responsive and really good with the community. So I'll almost certainly end up picking it up. And I know that Major already has it. So
Major has it. We were all talking about playing it last weekend too.
Yeah.
So I know there'll be a good group of us to play that too. Yeah. And it seems to have a pretty healthy community on Steam. But like I said about PC gaming, one of the things that frustrates me is if I want to play a game for years at a time, the community might not necessarily stick around.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do anything wrong.
Vermintine's a little bit of a...
and leave.
I think that Warhammer games are a little tricky because you have... Behind Warhammer, you have this really cultish following that's super passionate, but then you have some of the people that are just there, like they're summer weather fans, so to speak. And the moment that it kind of seems like that they're not interested, like they'd rather play Fortnite for 5,500 hours. And I'm like, I'm sorry, the Fortnite, PUBG, those
Fortnite's
games.
Fun.
I get that. They're fun for some people.
I'm trash at Fortnite, but it's still fun. I don't think I've gotten a single kill in Fortnite or PUBG.
Play the mobile game.
I did get a kill the other day, but usually I get shot in the back by their teammate.
Yeah, you just need to play the mobile game. So the mobile game is apparently you're playing against bots. Like the mobile game came out and everybody was like,
on Xbox. I'm playing on the Xbox One X.
Well, they're like saying like, oh man, I got my first chicken dinner ever, and man, I got 3 chicken dinners. And everybody's like, you know, these might be bots.
I did play a little bit on PC. I did okay on my PC game too.
But yeah, no, like I said though.
Let's wrap this up though.
Yeah,
because I got little ones knocking at my door.
Yeah, everything's going haywire because that's how it is. Anyway, so any of you folks on there that are new to the podcast that caught it on here, obviously Kev streams over on his channel on Twitch TV / it's KevN7 on Twitch or on YouTube on N7.
On YouTube is KevN7. Somebody took KevN7 on Twitch, so I went N7 Kev.
That's right. So it's N7 Kev on Twitch. KevN7 on YouTube. Good God, that shit's confusing. You need to get a hold of that other guy.
I just direct people usually to one or the other audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, go catch me KevN7 on YouTube.
And then also Xaiphen. He plays Warframe a lot. Doesn't stream it because you know, I think his internet's not good enough. But you know, Egypt Pie says that that no net neutrality will mean that's better, right?
Well, luckily in my state, they're actually counteracting his laws. They're making it illegal to do that shit.
Yeah, I'm in the same state. Yeah, they're also in that same state. They're also making it more difficult for people to mine Bitcoin. So, you know, there's some good sides and there's some bad sides there. In any case, and if you guys are interested in checking out my streams, I'm streaming Monday and Wednesday for the game stream in the Mortiel Fallacy. You can find me on the Pixel Crashers Discord, or Pixel Crashers Twitch, or over on YouTube on youtube.com/Angelus Mortiel. So, and those links will obviously all be down in the bottom below this video, wherever you are watching this. So, and I guess we're also on Mixer too. People
Actually, I get a lot of viewers from Mixer, especially when I was streaming Mario Odyssey. Surprisingly enough,
that's because all the Xbox players can't fucking watch it. That's so they can't.
But I don't get a lot of, like, when I play like PlayStation or Splatoon stuff. I don't get a lot of hits from Mixer, but I got a lot of them from Mario Odyssey. On Twitch, I tend to get more from my PC and PS4 stuff. And then YouTube is just the guys that have been kind of checking for me for years anyway.
And I just want to hear you rant. That's really what it is.
I try not to rant.
They want.
That's your thing.
I'm gonna pitch you an idea for your next video series. It's gonna be called #Glorious. Go.
Praise Gavin.
Anyway, guys, we're gonna get signed off here for the night. We'll be back next week for another Pixel Crashers party, and the week after that for another Pixel Crashers podcast. Until then, keep calling Kev a scrub. You guys have a good one.
Try not to fall.